The following is for entertainment and educational purposes only. On day 13 of the explosive federal trial against Shaun, Diddy Combs, the courtroom doors opened slowly, and in walked a man no one expected, Jim Carrey. Known for his surreal comedy, animated roles, and contagious laugh, Carrey took the stand not to entertain, but to expose. His face was pale, his voice was shaky, and his words devastating. Carrey claimed he witnessed events that haunted him for over a decade. But the moment that shook the courtroom to its core wasn't just what he saw. It was what he experienced, he said. Diddy once forced him into a bathtub, filled not with water, but with thick tomato sauce. He was stripped, filmed, humiliated. And when he tried to speak up, the world laughed it off as just another Jim Carrey story. But this time, no one was laughing. This time, the courtroom went dead silent. The courtroom had already seen celebrities walk in and out for days, but no one expected this. Doors opened, and in walked Jim Carrey. Not the wildly grinning icon of The Mask or the elastic-faced star from Liar Liar, but a quiet, hollow-eyed man in a dark suit. His hair thinner, his smile gone. Even the reporters froze. It was as if the entire room forgot how to breathe. Carrey didn't look at anyone as he made his way to the stand. No nods, no glances, just a quiet shuffle like a man dragging an invisible weight behind him. The bailiffs wore him in, and the judge asked if he was ready. "I've been ready for 17 years, Carrey said. The voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Steady, haunted. He began with how he met Diddy. Not on a film set, not through agents. At a party, one of those whispered about ultra-exclusive high ceiling, no phone, sallowed Hollywood Hills parties. You hear about them and you think it's legend, he said. Then you're inside one and suddenly legend turns into something that stains you. He described the first night, late 2006, after the wrap of a movie he didn't name. An invitation slid to him at a private dinner. It didn't say much, just a time and address and a symbol. A red circle with a crown. He laughed nervously on the stand. "I thought it was an art thing, I didn't know it was a warning." Carrey said he arrived at the party alone. Valets in tuxedos. No phones allowed. "The moment I stepped in, it felt like another planet. There were people, like new actors, singers, executives, but nobody spoke in full sentences. Everyone was smiling too wide, like they were trying to keep something from leaking out." He said, Diddy greeted him personally, called me, his favorite face told me tonight's going to be a riot. I thought it was a joke. Then he said Diddy whispered something that stuck in his head for years. "Let's see if funny man can laugh when the lights goof." Carrey paused, he looked down at the table. His fingers twitched. "That was the last thing I remember before things got strange." And with that the court leaned in, hanging on every word. Because in that moment, the clown had become the witness and his truth was just beginning. Jim Carrey shifted in the witness chair, hands trembling slightly as he took a breath. The courtroom, already stunned from his opening remarks, fell into deeper silence as he described what happened next. "The mansion was unlike anything I'd ever seen," Carrey began. "It wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed for control. Glass floor mirrors on the ceiling's walls that looked like they breathed when the lights flickered. It felt like the whole place was watching you." He explained that guests were offered drinks by people in identical silver masks, each with a small red crown etched into the forehead. There was no music, just ambient tones that looped like a heartbeat. "It wasn't a party," he said. "It was a performance. And we were the audience. Or maybe we were the act." He recalled a moment when he tried to leave. "I felt uneasy. The energy was off. I walked toward the front entrance and a man, not security, just someone in a tux, stood in front of the door and said, 'The red door hasn't opened yet.'" Carrey asked what that meant. The man only smiled. Diddy eventually pulled him aside. "He was different that night," Carrey said. "Not the charismatic mogul. Everyone knew his eyes were empty, like he was reading off a script in his head. Diddy allegedly told him, 'You're here now. Might as well see what the next level looks like.'" Then came the infamous red door Carrey described being led down a marble hallway lit only by red sconces. At the end was a heavy wooden door painted bright crimson, guarded by two men in robes. It was theatrical, Carrey explained, but the dread I felt was real. Every instinct told me to run. Inside the room, the temperature dropped. The walls were black. There was a bathtub in the center, vintage, claw-footed, pristine white, except it was filled with something thick red and unmistakable. It was tomato sauce, Carrey said flatly. Gallons of it. The smell hit me first, then the laughter, and then Diddy's voice. Carr's voice cracked. He said, "Strip gettin', this is the baptism." "One." I thought it was a joke, I laughed, and then he snapped. His tone changed. "Strip now." The courtroom shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know what to do. Cameras were pointed at me. People in masks surrounded the tub. I froze. Carrey wiped his face. And then I did what he said. I took off my clothes, I stepped into that sauce, and I lost a piece of myself that night. The judge leaned forward. Jurors blinked in disbelief. Because this wasn't just strange. It was ritualistic, calculated and chilling. And it was only the beginning. Jim Carr's voice lowered as he leaned forward on the stand, his eyes unfocused, staring into a memory too heavy to carry. The courtroom didn't dare interrupt him. "It wasn't the sauce that disturbed me the most," he said quietly. "It was the sound of the laughter." He explained that once he was in the tub completely naked, shivering from the cold, thick texture of the tomato paste, he began hearing chuckles. Not normal laughter, but slow, syncopated, rehearsed from behind the masks, as if everyone was reading from the same twisted script. I remember asking Diddy what the hell was happening. He just knelt down, touched the sauce with 2 fingers, wiped it across my chest, and said, "This is your transformation." I thought I was in a nightmare. He recalled seeing 2 cameras recording from different angles. They weren't hidden. They were deliberate, operated by individuals with no faces. Just plain black masks dressed in tuxedos. I knew it was being filmed. But it wasn't for a show. It wasn't for the public. It was for leverage. The judge asked, "Did you consent to being recorded?" Carrey shook his head. "I didn't even know what I was consenting to. There was no paperwork. No explanation, is just manipulation." He described trying to climb out of the tub only to be pushed back in gently. Not violently, but assertively, by someone in the crowd. They didn't want me to leave. They wanted a reaction. I gave them fear, and they fed off it. One of the most chilling moments came when Carrey said a woman in a mask walked up to him, handed him a red envelope, and whispered, "Welcome to the archive." Inside was a single photo. Him in the tub, mid-expression. Tomato sauce dripping from his chin. "I still have it," Carrey said. "It was mailed to my house years later. No return address." He tried to leave again, and this time, Diddy blocked the door. He said, "You're one of us now. Don't forget that." Carrey wiped his hands against his pant legs as if trying to clean something off them. The sauce washed off, but what it did to me didn't. He revealed that for months after that night he couldn't go near Italian food, couldn't smell ketchup. I'd get sick. My therapist called it sensory trauma. The court sat frozen, stunned not just by what was said, but how real it sounded. Jim Carrey, the man who turned madness into comedy, was now using his voice for something else entirely. Truth. Jim Carrey leaned back in the witness chair, his eyes glossed over, distant. He took a sip of water before speaking again. "I thought when I left that house, I could just forget it, that I'd laugh it off, throw myself into work, pretend it never happened. But something followed. Me, like the cameras were still rolling even after I got home." He described the days after the incident as a blur. He isolated himself. In his home, refused interviews, canceled appearances. "I told my manager I had the flu, but it wasn't the flu. It was shame. It clung to him like a second skin." He revealed that he did try to speak out. "Once I told a friend, another actor, someone I trusted, and he laughed, thought I was making a bit. He said, 'Tomato sauce. That's gold, Jim. You should do that on Fallon.'" The courtroom didn't move. That's when I realized no one would believe me. Not as Jim Carrey. Not as the funny guy. They'd turn it into a meme, a joke, a late-night punchline. So he stayed silent. He told the court he buried the memory under a mountain. of scripts and performances, threw himself into roles that were wild, unhinged, over the top, because if he acted crazy enough in public, maybe people would stop asking if he was okay in private. And it worked, he said bitterly. People thought I was eccentric method genius, but I was just trying to drown something I couldn't explain. He said the trauma started to leak out in strange ways. Panic attacks, nightmares, strange visions during shoots. There was one scene in a movie I was covered in red, paint for a dream, sequence, and I had a breakdown on set. They said I was improvising, I was reliving. He looked at the jury, I wasn't being Jim Carrey, I was surviving years past, and the memory stayed buried until last year. That's when he received another envelope, no note, just a flash drive. On it, footage of me in the tub, multiple angles. The same laughter in the background. He turned to the prosecution table. That's the footage you have now. Gasps. The courtroom shifted again. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about me. That tape wasn't some twisted prank. It was part of something bigger, something systematic. His eyes narrowed. It was leverage, insurance control, and Diddy. He's been doing it for years. And for the first time, the world wasn't laughing. Jim Carrey sat forward, now no longer trembling. His voice was steady, and his eyes were sharp. The courtroom could feel the shift. This wasn't just a victim recounting a traumatic night. This was a man who had connected the dots. A witness ready to expose not just Diddy, but the entire machine that kept him protected. I started asking questions. Carrey said, not publicly, just in my own circles. Quietly, I reached out to other entertainers. People I thought might know what I went through. I didn't ask directly, I just hinted, and they all reacted the same way. Silence. Carrey described how people avoided the subject, changed topics. Some even cut off contact. One actor told me, "Don't go looking into the abyss, Jim. You might not like what stares back." That's when I realized it wasn't just Diddy. It was everyone around him. Agents, handlers, PR firms, even some police. He testified that he had a meeting with a highly executive at a streaming service in 2018. The meeting was supposed to be about producing a new dark comedy series. I brought up my idea loosely based on what happened to me, not even by name, just a character who gets pulled into a cult-like Hollywood elite party and ends up humiliated in a bath. The executive went pale, shut his laptop, and said, "We don't touch Diddy-adjacent stories here." Carrey stared into the jury box. That's the phrase, Diddy-adjacent. You'll hear it in back rooms, in late-night calls. It means untouchable. He mentioned another troubling detail. A lawyer once sent him an anonymous warning, a printed letter, nor turn, address that read, "You talk, you disappear. You joke, we ignore. You testify, we bury." Carrey kept that letter, gave it to the prosecution. It was added to the official record. "Do you believe this is a criminal enterprise?" The attorney asked. Carrey didn't blink. "Absolutely, and it's run like one. He's not just a producer, he's a puppeteer. And the industry, maybe even the justice system, helped him keep the strings hidden." He said some of the people he suspected had been at the infamous party, included names he couldn't prove, but voices he recognized. Famous voices, laughter I've heard. In interviews, whispers I remember, from talk shows. If I said their names out loud, this courtroom would implode. The judge cautioned him not to speculate. "I'm not speculating," Carrey replied. "I'm saying this. If Diddy falls, he won't fall alone. And that's why so many are terrified I'm even here." His words echoed across the chamber, because in a room full of power, Jim Carrey had just made it clear he was no longer afraid. The courtroom was already on edge, but when Jim Carrey was asked to describe the moment that confirmed his deepest fears, the atmosphere tightened. His eyes went cold. His hands locked together. He looked directly at the jury. "It happened at a party in the hills," he said slowly. "Not the same as the tomato sauce night. This was later. A smaller event. Just a few people, mostly A-listers, some people I didn't know. The kind of gathering where you're not invited unless you've been vetted. I went because I thought it might help clear the air, rebuild bridges." The party was hosted by someone close to Diddy, a producer. Carrey didn't give a name, only saying the man was respected, protected, and never on camera. He described the home as sleek, angular, and surrounded by mirrors. You could see yourself from every angle, he said. It felt like a trap. After an hour or so, Carrey excused himself to use the bathroom. That's when it happened. I opened the door and stepped in normal bathroom, black marble counters, dim yellow lighting. But when I turned to close the door, Diddy was standing there just waiting. Smiling, Carrey's voice dropped. He said, "You still think you're out of this?" I told him I didn't want any trouble, that I was just here for drinks, nothing more. He didn't say anything, he just stepped closer. And then came the touch. It wasn't violent, Carrey explained, but it was deliberate. He placed his hand on my lower back, then pushed gently but firmly enough to back me toward the sink. Carrey said he froze. I wanted to leave, I should have screamed, but I didn't, because I was scared not of him. Physically, he's not a big guy, but of what would happen if I made a scene. Diddy allegedly whispered something that sent chills down Carrey's spine. He said, "Don't forget who gave you that tub scene. You still owe me." And then he walked out like it was normal. The courtroom sat in stunned disbelief. Carrey looked shattered. That's when I knew it wasn't just a freak show. It was leverage. That tub that wasn't the event. That was the contract. He went home that night and didn't leave the house for days. His assistant found him pacing in the kitchen, muttering about tomato sauce and hidden cameras. I wasn't just a witness. He said I was a product, something Diddy thought he owned. And for the first time, Jim Carrey admitted. In court, I don't think I've ever really come back from that moment. As Jim Carrey continued, his voice became quieter, less about rage, more about resignation. He paused for a long moment before saying, "I tried to tell people, I really did. But every time I spoke up, the room changed, smiles vanished, calls stopped getting returned. And when I finally got bold enough to tell the truth, they called me insane." He recounted an interview he gave in 2014, the late-night appearance, where he made cryptic jokes about the secret handshakes and the puppet masters behind Hollywood. The clip went viral for years, treated as a meme, a punchline. Viewed according to Carrey. It was his first real attempt at telling the truth. "They laughed, everyone laughed," he said. "Even the host, but I was describing them right there in real time." The courtroom listened as Carrey explained how the backlash crept in. Not directly. No statements. No threats. Just doors quietly closing. A film he was cast in suddenly lost funding. A scheduled Netflix special was pulled for creative differences. Endorsements. Evaporated projects were delayed or worse, green-lit with new leads. It was like being erased, he said. Not cancelled, just quietly deleted. And then came the friends. He said several former co-stars privately warned him to drop it. One told him, "This isn't the time for courage, Jim. This is the time for survival." Carrey revealed he had written a letter in 2017 to several high-ranking Hollywood guilds and unions anonymously at first. The letter described the tomato sauce incident, the bathroom confrontation, and included screenshots of the red envelope photo. He'd been sent. No response, not even an acknowledgement. I thought maybe they didn't believe it, or maybe they were scared too. Then in 2020, Carrey began noticing a pattern. People who had once laughed at him were now going quiet. When Diddy's name came up, whispers of allegations, NDAs surfacing. It was like the air had changed, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The courtroom watched as Carrey took out a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. He opened it carefully. On it, printed in bold black letters, "It's not funny anymore." He held it up for the jury to see. "This was sent to me last year." No name, just that sentence. I took it as a threat, but I also took it as confirmation, because what once made them laugh was now being buried in silence. And Jim Carrey was done being quiet. The prosecutor leaned forward, adjusting their microphone. "Mr. Carrey, can you describe the footage you received? The one on the flash drive?" Jim nodded slowly. "Yes, but I want to be clear. What I saw wasn't just blackmail, it wasn't just humiliation. It was planned, scripted, like someone had done it before, like they knew exactly how to break a person down and document it for insurance." He explained that the flash drive had no label, just a red sticker on one side, and the initials JC burned into the plastic. It arrived at his home in Laurel Canyon by courier Norturn address. No explanation. When he opened it on his private laptop, what he saw made him physically ill. "It was me," he said, staring at the courtroom floor. The tomato sauce, the bathtub, the laughing in the background, multiple camera angles, different lighting setups. It was like a scene from a movie, but I never agreed tossed her in it. He testified that the video showed a younger Jim, shocked, stripped, covered in red. He described how the camera slowly zoomed in on his face, capturing every detail of his confusion, discomfort, and eventual collapse into silent sobbing. "That footage wasn't meant to humiliate me," Carrey said. "It was meant to own me. It was a trophy." He revealed that throughout the footage, voices could be heard giving instructions. One said, "Zoom in." Another whispered, "Get the eyes, that's where the fear lives." And then unmistakably, Did's voice, laughing, loud, unapologetic. At one point in the video, Carrey is heard asking, "Is this a joke?" And the response is chilling in its simplicity. "Only if you survive it." He paused. "I didn't. Not really." The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter's keys paused for a moment. "I couldn't watch all of it," Carrey continued. "I stopped halfway through and shut the laptop. I went outside and vomited." He said he kept the drive in a safe for months, unsure whether to delete it or hand it over. Anonymous insiders here realized he couldn't hide anymore. "I knew if I didn't testify, that footage would haunt me forever. Not because of what it showed, but because I let them keep the power." He handed the flash drive to the prosecution team 2 weeks before his court appearance. They authenticated it. The metadata matched, time-stamped, dated, archived, in a folder called Assets Greater Than 2008, greater than Red Room. That name alone. Red Room sparked whispers throughout the courtroom because now the jury understood this wasn't just trauma. This was a system, and Jim Carrey had been one of its earliest victims. Jim Carrey leaned forward, gripping the wooden edge of the witness stand, as if anchoring himself to reality. His voice, once trembling, now carried the weight of finality. Steady, heavy, and mournful. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "It's not even about me anymore. It's about all the people who never made it to this courtroom." The judge allowed a moment of silence before Carrey continued. He spoke of the toll the years had taken. Depression, withdrawal from Hollywood, moments where he nearly gave up. "There were times," he admitted, "where I thought about ending it. Not because of guilt, but because of helplessness. You scream, and the world just keeps sloughing." His words cut through the silence like a blade. He then reached for a small weathered notebook from his pocket. "This," he said, "was my truth. The only place I could write what happened without fearing eraser." He opened it and read an entry dated 2009. "They made me into a joke, so I'd never be taken seriously. That's the real trick. Not silence, but ridicule. Because if the world laughs at your pain, they never have to face it." The room was still. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Carrey pointed to the defense table where Diddy sat expressionless. "You took my body and turned it into a stage. You took my fear and turned it into leverage, but you don't get my voice. Not anymore." He turned to the jury. "I've lived through fame. I've lived through loss. But nothing prepared me for what happened behind closed doors in that world. And I know deep down there are more like me, people with footage, with memories, with nightmares. They can't wake up from." He paused again, his voice lowering. "I came here today not to seek justice for myself. I came to make sure the next kid, the next artist, the next dreamer who walks into this industry doesn't end up in a bathtub full of tomato sauce thinking this is how you earn a seat at the table." The judge nodded as he finished. Jim Carrey stepped down, not with applause, not with cameras flashing, but with the weight of the truth finally off his back, and for the first time in years he walked away lighter.